Hey guys, Sam Rino here with another video. In this video, I'm going to share a few tips with you that might help your bird photography. If you don't agree with them or you do things differently, I'm not going to get offended. Let's just try to help some people. So if it helps you out, that's fantastic. If you don't agree with it, like I said, I'm not going to get offended. So the first tip I want to talk about is light. People really underestimate how important light is. Just by moving over a few feet to the left or to the right can make all the difference in the world how the bird's getting exposed. So don't be afraid to move around. If you're not getting good results, instead of messing around with your settings, try moving around a little bit and use the light to your advantage. The other thing is shooting early in the morning and later in the day will give you better results than trying to shoot in the middle of the day when the light is really harsh. I also like shooting on overcast days, not really dark, cloudy days, but a little overcast can give you some beautiful light and bring out the detail in birds. So I love shooting on those type of days. So light is very important. Try to use it to your advantage. Try not to shoot against the sun. You're going to get some horrible results most of the time. Try to have the sun back, to your back. I know it's not always possible, but if you can, that's obviously the way you want to shoot. So anyway, so I'll show you some examples of what I'm talking about, and we'll go from there. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you guys enjoyed, I'll try to make more, and let's get going. All right, guys. By the way, there's an eagle behind me sitting in the tree for like an hour now. He's like breaking my will. He's really far out. He's across the way. But I'm hoping he does something, so we'll see. All right, guys, let's get going. All right. So here we have a kestrel, and as you can see, most of the light is on his backside right now. You don't see any detail on his face or in his eyes. Eyes to me are one of the most important things when you're doing bird photography, or wildlife for that matter. So I moved over to my right a few feet, and it made all the difference in the world, because now you can see he's nicely lit. You can see a lot of detail on his face, a lot of detail in his eyes, and it makes a world of difference just by moving over a little bit. It was all the adjustment that I needed to get a much better photo, and this is what I'm talking about. So here's another example. Here's a killdeer, and same thing. Most of the light is on his backside, and he's also positioned the wrong way. I'm not really getting a good shot of his face and his eyes, and his face again are not very well lit, because most of the light is on his backside. So this time I moved over a few feet to my left, and it made all the difference in the world, as you see here. Now his eyes are all lit, his face is lit, and it's a much better picture, and it's a keeper. Again, using your feet makes all the difference in the world. Just moving around a little bit can make a huge difference. So this next segment is going to be about birds in flight. One of the most difficult things for people in bird photography is getting good birds in flight pictures. People find it very difficult, and I think the number one thing that people do wrong is they don't use enough shutter speed. It gets hammered into their head not to crank up the shutter speed, to keep the ISO down, so they're so afraid to raise the shutter speed. And what ends up happening is they end up getting motion blur, and then they're wondering, are they using the right focus mode? Is there something wrong with their camera? What are they doing wrong? And mostly what they're doing wrong is they're not using enough shutter speed most of the time. So don't be afraid crank up the shutter speed to the proper shutter speed for birds in flight. There's so many programs now that deal with noise so well and keeping detail. And honestly, today's cameras, they handle noise so well now that I don't think you have to be afraid of that anymore. So definitely use enough shutter speed. I'm going to show you some examples of not using enough shutter speed and then using the proper shutter speed and the difference, and we'll go from there. So that's tip number one for birds in flight. All right, guys. So in this first example here, we got a bald eagle. I was shooting ducks at the time when this bald eagle appeared out of nowhere. I was shooting at shutter speed 1250, and I realized quickly that I was getting motion blur and I wasn't shooting at fast enough shutter speed. So I bumped up my shutter speed to 1600, and now you're going to see that the eagle's in perfectly sharp, the eyes sharp, and it's much better picture, obviously, with no motion blur. So in this next example, we got a tern with a fish, and I shot this actually at 2000 shutter speed, which is pretty fast. His head is sharp, his eyes are sharp, the fish is sharp, but his wings are not. So in this next picture, you're going to see I shot that in shutter speed 2500, and you're going to see a much better result, in my opinion. His wings are sharp, his head is sharp, the fish is sharp, his eyes are sharp, and it's a better picture. So my point is, don't be afraid of shutter speed. Use it if you need it. Don't be afraid of it. It makes a big difference with birds in flight. I'm going to show you a few more pictures of birds in flight with high shutter speed, so you can take a look at them. So my next part of this birds in flight segment is about stabilization. I get asked this question all the time: what mode stabilization I'm using when I'm doing birds in flight. And I notice so many people that use mode 1. That's not the mode you want to be in. It's actually going to cause motion blur most of the time instead of doing what it's supposed to do. What you want to do is use mode 2 or mode 3, or turn it off altogether, because using mode 1 is actually going to work against you most of the time. So that's not what you want to be in. You're going to get much better results using mode 2, mode 3, or turn it off altogether. Mode 2 is usually for panning, and 3 for erratic subjects. I find that they both work pretty well for birds in flight. So, either one of those is going to give you much better results than using mode 1. Keep mode 1 for when you're doing video or using low shutter speed. All right, guys. So the next thing I want to talk about with birds in flight is, I get this question a lot: what focus mode do I use? And the focus mode I use most of the time is what they call on Sony zone. Every manufacturer has a name for it. I believe when I was shooting Nikon, it was called group focus. Not sure what Canon calls it. But that's what I use most of the time. I know Sony has real-time tracking, but I honestly don't like it for birds in flight. I find it to be too slow to grab focus and loses focus a lot. So I always use zone. That works best for me. Like I said, every manufacturer has a similar type of focus mode, where basically you have an area or a box where basically you try to put your subject in the middle of it and the camera grabs focus using contrast or whatever. And that's what I find works best for me. So that's the mode that I use all the time, basically, for birds of flight. Very rarely when I don't use that mode, and that's what I suggest you use. All right, guys. Another tip I'm going to give you is don't always go to all the popular spots where there's a million other photographers there, standing shoulder to shoulder with them, getting the same shots. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I go to those places once in a while, but I like finding my own places. You know, don't be afraid to go exploring. I like driving, for example, by the countryside by me and just going down random roads. I don't even know where I'm going. You know, you find your way back. You know, you got your GPS, and you find some gems just driving around. Check out my video with the pond that I found out in this remote area. It had a whole bunch of green herons just devouring frogs. I mean, that was an awesome find, and found it purely by accident. So don't be afraid to explore. You know, you find your own places, you got the whole place to yourself. That's just my suggestion. All right, guys. So my next tip is going to be about exposure compensation. One of my favorite tools to use. I like to shoot in manual with auto ISO. I just find trying to adjust ISO on the fly while you're trying to track a bird in flight, or you know, it's just very difficult and, you know, sometimes almost impossible to do. So I like to dial it in by using exposure compensation with auto ISO. I don't know how many times I saved my photo. I always have my finger on that little dial. You know, whether your picture's a little overexposed or a little underexposed, just by utilizing that, you can really dial it in and get much better results, so you don't have to fiddle around in post trying to fix it. So definitely use it. It's a very valuable tool, and I think it's underutilized by a lot of people, and it's one of my favorite things to use. All right, guys. So I hope these basic tips helped you out. If you enjoyed this kind of video, please let me know. I'll try to do more. If you were too advanced for this, I totally understand. Or if, you know, you don't agree with what I'm saying, I'm not going to get offended, like I said before. So again, I hope it helps some people out. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. It really helps me out. Trying to get this channel off the ground, and it's not easy. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe and hit the like button, but it really helps me out. So I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And thank you, guys. And until next time, all right, see you.
So many days is yet to come. Too many times has come to pass. Too many moments put aside. Getting out alive, getting out alive. Writing letters in the sand.